Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Cinco de Mayo. If anybody would have worn a sombrero today, you would have won the basket, but we didn't tell you that. But we do have chips and salsa, so help yourself to that. That's why we have chips and salsa, because today is Cinco de Mayo. And some people in this room didn't really know what Cinco de Mayo meant. Is that right, Bert? Okay. The 5th of May, yes. I'm Gina Orr. I'm Chief Philanthropy Officer at Sun Health Foundation, and I am thrilled to see all of you here, and you're going to get so much information in a little bit, and coming from such experts. Dave Eastman, local attorney, and Greg Bodine, an advisor around planned giving, so he's going to be able to share a lot with you. Alex, do you have the clicker? Okay. If you want to advance the slide. Just a quick history lesson on Sun Health. Some of you have heard this before. 50 years ago, when there was a group of residents in Sun City passed the hat to raise money to build Boswell Hospital in 1970, Del Webb in 1988, Sun Health became known as a resource at that time, and we still play that role today. So if you want to go further to the next one. So this is kind of a cool little timeline that we like to share with people. Thank you. I forgot to grab that. 1966, the founding. Boswell opened in 70. Del Webb opened in 88. Senior living, such as Grandview, was opened in 1996. We have Grandview folks here today. We have La Loma folks here today, 2005. Betty. Colonnade, we have Colonnade folks here today, 2008. Sun Health at Home, 2016. And then here we are today. All right, so what am I doing, Alex? Can you advance? This isn't advancing. There we go. So over the course of those 50 years, we had all of these programs, community health and education. We had a school of nursing. You know, we had 2 acute care hospitals, and so we needed nurses, so we opened a school of nursing so we could provide the nurses. Residence for special adults, the Olive Branch Senior Center, the Research Institute, hospice residents, Alzheimer's residents, and home health. And then here's the pictures of the hospitals now. Except Boswell, we probably want to update that picture because the new emergency department has just opened, is being used. There's Del Webb, the Research Institute, and our wellness programs. That still is our role as Sun Health Foundation. In 2008, let's see, and here's our communities, La Loma, Grandview, Colonnade, Sun Health at Home. So the community has given nearly $400 million to support health care that's available to all of you. Then in 2008, we started looking for another nonprofit partner. Our hospitals were reliant on Medicare reimbursements, which doesn't cover the cost of providing care. It came time for us to partner with the nonprofit Banner Health. So they operate the hospitals. Sun Health Foundation remained involved to continue to be sure that those hospitals were well equipped, which draws the best physicians and medical professionals. And so the community has really stepped up and continues to support the hospitals. All right. I think we need a new battery in this or something. Alex, can you advance? This isn't working. There we go. We're currently towards the tail end of a $48 million campaign, Generosity for Generations. The campaign was themed Generosity for Generations because we are seeing second and third generations move into our communities, into the Sun Cities area. There are people moving in whose parents lived here years ago and got great care at the hospitals, had access to other kinds of services, so they themselves are moving in. So generosity, those who gave before, provided the care that we are able to access now, and we're feeling like now is time that we can pay it forward as well. We're 76% to the $48 million goal, and Bert Kellum is the chair of our campaign, and he's excited to take us to the end at this year. So this program that we're working on now, and some of you may have been at an event last night where we had Dr. Koo, who is the physician executive of Banner MD Anderson Cancer Centers, spoke about cancer care in a global way, and then he also brought it down to what cancer care looks like here in our communities. So we're doing some work around cancer. they're bringing in new technology at Boswell, a robot that is diagnostic, and it's minimally invasive, and it's just an amazing piece of technology. And again, Dr. Koo said last night, don't be mesmerized by technology, because it really is the human touch. It's the technology that can draw some of the best docs. So it is a partnership. We've done some work around spine health over at Webb, Women's and Infant Services at the Louisa Kellum Center for Women's Health, 2,000 babies a year right there. Community Health and Wellness, and then, of course, the new emergency department over at Boswell, which is unbelievable. It's beautiful. So today, we are here. We continue to be a resource in the community, so we have wonderful relationships with professionals who can help us better understand tax issues, charity issues, planning issues, insurance issues, all of those kinds of things. So I'm pleased to introduce today, we have David Eastman, an estate planning attorney who's done several presentations for us. And as you exit today, there's a couple of booklets that you can pick up on your way out that might help you after what you hear today as well. So Dave, I'm going to ask you to come up, and I know they're here to hear what you have to say about taxes and charities, and then you'll be hearing from Greg Bodine right after that.
Is this working? Yes. Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? Anybody been to Hawaii and been to a big meeting in Hawaii recently? How about in the last 5-10 years? When they stand up, they say, aloha, right? What does the crowd say back? Aloha. There, now I feel better. I feel like I'm amongst friends now. So my name is David Eastman. I'm an estate planning attorney. All we do is estate planning law. We don't do any other type of law. So you'll never see our ad on TV with the bulldog or the eagle or something like that. We don't chase ambulances. I noticed some clients here. Hello, good morning. The Suns won last night, so I'm in a good mood today. Lucky for you. Yeah, go Suns. And I got a clicker. So we're going to talk a lot about taxes today. So I've been given 45 minutes to take what it usually takes about a 3-week course to teach you this and to go over it. So I'm going to feed you through a fire hose. I'm going to give you a ton of information in a short amount of time. We do have booklets in the back, as Gina said. They look like this. So grab one of these on your way out. It's got lots of good information on the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Inside of it is a little green sheet. If you want to come in for a free consultation with us to discuss these things, because there's no way you're going to understand all of it in the amount of time that we have today, it's a complimentary consultation. We don't charge for that. I know that's weird to have an attorney say free, but we don't charge for the consultation, so feel free to come in. We'll be happy to sit down with you and go over these things in more detail, okay? So let's get started with our presentation today. This is us. We have 2 offices, one that's in Scottsdale, off of Scottsdale Road and Bell. None of you are going to go there. It's a long drive. We have another office that's about 7 minutes from here, off of Bell and Reams. Everybody know where the Adelante Healthcare Center is? It's right behind the Adelante Healthcare Center, the 3-story building over there. Once again, all we do is estate planning. We don't do any other type of law. So we've been doing this for about 25 years locally here in the Valley. Wills, trusts, tax planning, that is what we do. Okay? So let's start with how will you be remembered? And before I jump into that, let me get a feel for who we're presenting to today. How many of you in here are married? Okay. How many of you wish you were single? Just kidding. Don't raise your hand if you are married. How many have kids? How many have grandkids? How many have great-grandkids? Great-great-grandkids. Finally weeded you out, right? How many of us love our grandkids more than our kids? All right, some honest people here. How many have an estate plan in place right now? A will, a trust, something like that? Okay, keep your hand raised if you have a trust as your estate planning vehicle. Okay, perfect. How many of you have been in to see your estate planning attorney in the last 5 years? 4 years? 3 years? 2 years? Last year? All right, good for you guys. Well done. The reason why I asked that is because the laws change all the time, right? And if you're not staying on top of your estate plan, there's no way it's going to work and do what it needs to do when you need it to work. We as estate planning attorneys, we're dealing with really 3 issues all the time. Issue number 1 is death. Issue number 2 is incapacity. And issue number 3 is taxes. And so if you're not constantly staying on top of your estate plan, it's probably not going to do what you want it to do when you need it to work the most. So it's very important that you're doing that, staying on top of that. We recommend every 3 years you have your estate plan reviewed and looked at. So if you haven't been in to see your estate planning attorney in the last 3 years, it's time to go in, have it looked at, have it reviewed, okay? The question that we want to start with is, how will you be remembered? So, is the last chapter of in our book of life written when we are finally in the grave? No, it's not. The last chapter of our book of life is going to be written after we're gone. Let me talk about a hero of mine real quick. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but as this slide came up, it reminded me of my hero. So my older brother, who recently passed away at the age of 55 due to COVID, in December of last year. He's a hero of mine. He's survived by a wife and 2 young children. And what makes him a hero to me is how he lived his life while he was here for that short time on earth. He was a great father. But when we get together as siblings and we talk about his life, usually the number one thing that comes up about his life is how much he served, how much he gave of his time, of his talents, of his abilities in that short period of time that he was here on earth. And that is his legacy. That is what he will always be remembered for. He was always serving in soup kitchens. He was always giving to the poor. He would sign up to give haircuts to the poor people, the homeless people. In Salt Lake City. So those are our fond memories of him. The question for you is, how will you be remembered? All of us are going to die. Is that correct? Anybody want to disagree with me on that? It's just a matter of what? When, right? We know we're going to die, but it's a matter of when is that time going to come. And when that time does come, how are you going to be remembered? What legacy are you going to leave behind? Is it going to be a legacy that's going to be remembered long after you're gone? Of service, of kindness, of giving, of charity? Are you going to leave the community that you lived in a better place than what you found it when you moved in? Is that how you're going to be remembered? When people are talking about you after you're gone, what are they going to say? What are they going to remember you by? I hope for me it's the same as my hero. I hope for me people are saying, Dave gave of his time, of his talents, of his ability to help the people around him, to serve other people, to give back to the community that helped him while he was alive. And so today, our focus is going to be on how can you do that, and how can you do that in the most tax-efficient manner, right? Now, certainly we never want the tax tail to wag the dog. Does that make sense? Meaning, we don't make every decision in life based on taxes. But how many of you in here can honestly raise your hand and say that this is who you want to be the beneficiary of your estate? How unpatriotic of all of you. Just kidding. We pay a lot of taxes while we're alive, don't we? Okay. And there are ways that we can mitigate taxes, but if we don't plan properly, then this is what happens, believe it or not. A large chunk of our estate ends up going to our favorite charity, the IRS. And there are things that we can do to mitigate that. There are things that we can do while we're alive to mitigate income taxes going to the IRS that you may not be familiar with. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. Does that make sense? All right, so let's jump into the meat of the presentation and go through this. Believe it or not, the tax code is built to make you philanthropically minded, to make it so that you want to give, so that makes it so that you want to donate to charities. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but there is this incentive that is built into the tax code to make you charitably inclined. And there's lots of things that promote this. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. Number one, let's say that I have a $20 million estate, okay? Anybody know what our federal estate tax exemption amount is today in 2022? Throw out some numbers, like The Price is Right. 13 million, 11 million, 12.06 is what it is in 2022. It's indexed for inflation, so it's going up every year. This year, 22, it is 12.06 million per person. What does that mean? It means that every single one of us in this room gets to have $12.06 million of stuff, house, car, checking, savings, stocks, bonds, brokerage, life insurance, retirement accounts, before we owe $1 of what? Federal estate tax. There's two types of estate taxes. There's state and federal, just like income tax, right? Does the state of Arizona currently have a state estate tax? How many say yes? How many say no? How many have no idea what I'm talking about anymore? All right. So no, the state of Arizona does not have a state estate tax, which means the state of Arizona is still a good place to die, right, die, right? So it's a good place to die. We have no state estate tax in Arizona. And the federal estate tax exemption amount, is that going to always be at 12.06? Can it change?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it can change at any time. And who gets to control where it goes? Who controls that? Do you control that? Do I control that? Who controls what that number is? The government, okay? Anybody in here heard of the Build Back Better America plan? They've now rebranded it as the billionaire tax. That's how they've rebranded it, because Build Back Better America plan didn't have the same ring to it. So they've rebranded it as the billionaire tax. That billionaire tax, some of the provisions that you're going to see in it are dealing with the federal estate tax exemption amount. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Biden have talked about dropping the exemption from 12.06 to what? Anybody know? 3.5. Okay, so that's a big swing, isn't it? From 12.06 to 3.5. That's going to affect a lot of us, a lot more of us. Less than 0.5% of the American population is worrying about a federal estate tax with a $12.06 million federal estate tax exemption. If that drops to 3.5, how many more of us are going to be filing a federal estate tax upon death? Lots more of us, okay? So it's important you understand this, because if the exemption does drop, and we have a $5 million estate, a $20 million estate, a $10 million estate, and we're leaving it all to our sons, our daughters, our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, then we owe what? A federal estate tax. Anybody know what the rate is today on federal estate tax? It's the highest tax you'll pay. It's 40%. So every dollar over our exemption, we're paying 40 cents on the dollar. Does that make sense? So what are some things that the tax code says that promote philanthropy? If we want to leave some of our estate to who? Charities. Does that get taxed? No. So you'll hear of Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. They're doing some of the ultra uber wealthy people are trying to say, let's leave up to the exemption amount to our kids. Anything over the exemption, we're leaving to who? Charities, right? If I leave my kids, if I have 2 kids, let's say, and my exemption is $12 million, let's say it doesn't drop, and I leave each of them $6 million, is that a lot of money? Is that more than they probably ever need in their lifetime? And if my estate is $20 million, and I leave the remaining $8 million, 8 plus 12 is 20, I think, it's still early, I leave the remaining $8 million to my favorite charity, how much does the IRS get now? 0. We've just solved having the IRS be our favorite beneficiary. Does that make sense? So those are some things that the tax code is built to say. We want you to be philanthropically minded. So that's one way we can do some of that. Another way is Arizona's tax credits. How many of you are aware that we have Arizona tax credits? Raise your hand. Everybody in this room should be raising your hand. This is huge. This is massive. This is amazing. If I owe $6,000 of state income tax to the state of Arizona, and I can make over $4,000 of state tax credits to charities, how much have I just solved on the tax problem? 6 minus 4 is 2. Now all I owe is 2 to the Arizona State Department of Revenue. Does that make sense? Which would I rather do? Give the Arizona State Department of Revenue $6,000 or $2,000? $2,000. And this happens every year. Every year you can give over $4,000 in Arizona state tax credits to your favorite charities. Some of these great organizations that need your money more than the state of Arizona needs your money. Does that make sense? So you should be doing this every year. If you owe $1 of Arizona state tax, you should be making the donation to the charity. Then you owe no tax, or you've minimized your tax to the state of Arizona. Does that make sense? One good thing about this is if you haven't made the tax payment, if you haven't made the charity distribution before the end of the year, you can make it up till April of the year that you file the income tax return. Does that make sense? So let's say last year in 2021, we're past April now, but let's say I had forgotten to make the charitable donations, and I owed $4,000 in state income tax. As long as I made the contributions to the charity by April 15th, before April 15th, then it counts for the 2021 tax year. Does that make sense? So if you forget, you're like, oh, shoot, it's January. Forgot to make the contributions. You're okay. Go talk to your CPA. You can still do it. Does that make sense? So this is another incentive for you to be philanthropically minded, giving back to your communities that you live in, instead of giving it to the state of Arizona. And they're going to use it for who knows what. Does that make sense? So great planning opportunities. Let's talk about income taxes real quick. So President Trump in 2017 passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right? When that was passed, they almost doubled, nearly doubled, what your standard deduction is. Prior to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, over about 33 to 34% of Americans were itemizing their deductions. Anybody know what it is now, since the standard deduction has almost doubled since 2017? You're right around 10% of those of us that itemize our deductions now. That's a big drop, the itemized deductions. How does that affect what you're doing? How many of you make annual contributions, donations to charities? I'm not going to ask how much, don't worry. But most of us in this room, every year we give to our church, we give to Sun Health, we give to Humane Society, Arizona Animal Welfare League, Make-A-Wish, our favorite charity. We give some money, right? Most of us do that. But now, because we don't get to itemize that deduction, you're not getting a charitable deduction for that contribution. Does that make sense? And so, now you may be saying, Dave, that's not the reason I give, which is great. That's not why we should give. Once again, we don't let the tax tail wag the dog. Maybe you have altruistic reasons to give. You really love giving and you want to help, and you really don't care about the tax. But there are some benefits that we get if we make charitable contributions tax-wise, and we can still get an itemized deduction if we do it right, okay? So let's talk real quick about how some of this can work. Before I get there, let's talk about this slide. This is some of the changes that have happened. We've talked about the $12.06 million exemption now in 2022. GST is our generation skipping transfer tax exemption amount. So if we skip a generation, if I don't leave my children the inheritance, but I skip that generation, I leave it to my grandkids or my great-grandkids or my great-great-grandkids like you, sir, then we have a tax on that, okay? But that exemption is 12.06. It's tied to the federal estate tax exemption. Our gift tax, our annual gift tax our annual gift tax exclusion amount is increased to $16,000. So Some of you'll come in and you'll see me and say, Dave, I've been making $10,000 gifts to my kids every year because that's the amount I can give without filing a gift tax return. It's not $10,000. That's what it was a few years ago. It's now $16,000 you can give. Does that make sense? And there's no gift tax that has to be filed. And then if you have non-citizen spouse, it's $164,000 that you can give to your non-citizen spouse without there being a tax issue. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about. Grouping our charitable contributions. Can everybody see this board? Yes, no? I'm not going to use it if you can't see it. Can you see it over here? Yes. Can you see it back there? Okay. We're going to do some math. We hate math, don't we? Okay. So, we're going to talk about how you guys file your taxes. This is our itemized deductions, and this is our standard deduction. What is our standard deduction for 2022? It's just on the board. 25,900, right? So this is what we're going to get automatically if we take the standard deduction. 25,900 of a deduction, okay? Let's say that this year I give $10,000 to my church. That is my charitable donation. Plus, and I do that every year. I give $10,000 every year to my church as a tithe, as I want a new gym put in, whatever. This is my charitable donation. Plus, we get our state and local tax deduction. Anybody know what that's capped at? So I heard it. Somebody said it. So what? 10,000. So I'm going to get my 10,000 state and local tax deduction. State and local. 10 and 10 is what? This is hard math this morning. Which number is greater, this one or this one? So which deduction are we going to take? You're going to jump over here and take the standard, which means you're not going to get any tax benefit for that charitable deduction. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we talk about this slide, grouping our charitable contributions into 1 year, what do we mean? Well, let's say I decide in this year, 2022, I know for the next 3 years, 2022, 2023, and 2024, I'm going to make a $10,000 contribution to my church because I do it every year. So instead of waiting every year to make the $10,000 distribution to the church, I'm going to do all 10 for each year in 1 year. So what's 10 times 3? 30. Now I've made a $30,000 charitable contribution in what year? 2022. Plus, I still get my state and local, right? That's automatic. That's another 10, right? What's 30 plus 10? 40, you're all still awake. Now which number is greater? 40. So now I'm going to take the $40,000 itemized deduction. Now I get the deduction for those charitable contributions. Now, some of you may say, well, Dave, I don't like the idea of giving $30,000 all to the charity in 1 year. That kind of, I don't know what they're going to do with it. I kind of like to monitor what the charities are going to do each year. That way, if they screw it up in this year, I can change my mind the next year. You could take that $30,000 distribution and leave it to a donor-advised fund, donor-advised fund. And if you leave it to a donor-advised fund, I take $30,000, give it to my donor-advised fund. Then every year for the next 3 years, I can go to the donor-advised fund and say $10,000 in 2022, $10,000 in 2023, $10,000 in 2024. So I still get the control of monitoring when, how much they get it, but I get to take the full deduction when? In 2022. Does that make sense? So these are some ways that you can get around the change in the itemized deductions versus the standard deduction. You can still get the income tax deduction for the charitable contributions you're already making. That's one way to do it. Does that make sense?
What was that name of the donor-advised fund?
You had it all except for one word, fund.
Fund. Oh.
Donor-advised fund. And you set up a donor-advised fund with your financial planner. Okay, so most of your financial planners, Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, they're all going to have donor advised funds that you can go in and set up. Does that make sense? So it's a great planning opportunity. Any questions on how you can do that?
Well, that helps you in 2022, but it doesn't help you in the next 2 years after that.
Correct.
All your marbles in the 2020.
100% right. So in 2023, when I file my income taxes, I'm going to take which deduction? Standard. 2024, I'm going to take which deduction? Standard. Okay? So when would this really become applicable? When do we want to take a big deduction? In what kind of a year? A big income tax year, right? So we sold a big piece of property, right? We have a lot of income tax in that year, then maybe this is what we do. Let me give you an example of this. All right. How many of you have retirement accounts? IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, almost everybody. These are great. I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit if that's okay. These are great financial planning vehicles. Why are they great financial planning vehicles? Because you put money into them, income tax deferred, they grow income tax deferred, and you don't have to touch it until you're how old? 72. Who said 72? Used to be 70 and a half. 2019 Secure Act is passed by President Trump, changes that from 70 and a half to 72. So we don't have to touch it now until we're 72. At 72, we have to start taking a what? RMD, required minimum distribution. Whether you want to or not, you have to take the RMD. If you don't take the RMD, how much of a penalty? 50% penalty. IRS is not messing around when it comes to RMDs. 50% penalty on top of the income tax. 50% plus 25% is how much? 75% of the RMD is gone if you don't take it. So you've got to take your RMD. So very important that we do that. Now, with the Secure Act, the biggest change that happened with the Secure Act is they said that when you, the owner of the IRA, dies, let's say I have $1 million IRA at Charles Schwab, Dave Eastman's IRA. I list my 30-year-old son as the beneficiary of my $1 million IRA when I die. It used to be, prior to Secure Act, that when I died, my son was able to stretch out that IRA for his remaining life expectancy. A 30-year-old's life expectancy is how long? About 50 years, 53, 54 years. That's a long time. He gets to continue to defer the what? The income tax. That's great planning. Well, guess what? When ERISA law was passed in the 1970s and President Ford stroked his signature on that piece of legislation that enacted ERISA law, they never, in their wildest dreams, imagined that you would be doing what you're doing with your retirement accounts to the tune of over trillions of dollars in retirement accounts, which is not using them for your what? Retirement, but you're using them as what? Estate planning vehicles. You're trying to pass on these massive assets to the next generation, income tax deferred. And guess what? The game is over because they figured it out. And so in 2019, they said no more. Now, Dave, when you leave your $1 million Charles Schwab IRA to your son Johnny, there's no longer a 50-year life expectancy stretch out. It's now down to what? 10 years. 10 years. Johnny has to take it all out in 10 years. So when Johnny starts taking this out in 10 years, and let's say he's a doctor, he's still working, he's in the 30, 35, 40% income tax bracket, and he's now forced to take, over 10 years, $1 million out, what's going to happen to his income taxes? They're going to shoot through the roof, right? So let's pretend we're all in Vegas, and I've given you all a bunch of chips. How many of you have been to Vegas? You don't have to just admit you gamble, just you've been there, right? Okay, so we've all been to Vegas. We've been around the roulette table. We've seen the chips. I give you all your chips. And I tell each of you, you have to bet on one of two bets. That's it. One of two bets. One bet you can bet on is that tax rates are going to go down. You've got to take all your chips, put it on the thing that says rates are going down. Or you can take all your chips and bet that rates are going to go up. Where are you going to put your chips? Everybody has to bet. Where are you going to put your chips? Up, up. Rates are going to go up. Okay, tax rates are going to go up. We're right now, under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, under Trump, tax rates are historically low. Those are going to go up. So, how does this all come together? If we all think tax rates are going to go up in the future, and right now you are in the lowest income tax bracket you've ever been in because you're retired, you don't have income coming in, all you have is your Social Security, maybe your RMDs, and you think tax rates are going to go up by the time you die and you leave all this money to your son Johnny, and he's going to be at the highest income tax rate, then we should be taking these $1 million IRAs right now and doing what? Give them to charities, a good idea, it's a great plan. But if we need the money while we're alive, we can convert them into a what? Roth. We can do Roth conversions. That's different than Roth contributions. Those are not the same thing. Okay? So Roth conversions. We take our traditional IRA, we convert it into a Roth IRA, but here's the kicker. When we convert a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA, what do we have to pay? Maybe now it's all coming together. Because when we do the conversion of the traditional to the Roth and I have a high income tax year, what can I do to mitigate the income tax that year? I'd lump my charitable contributions into that same year. Now I get more deduction in that year that I did the Roth contribution. Does that make sense? So those are some things that you should be thinking about doing. If we think tax rates are only going to go up, and I were to ask each of you individually, would you rather pay 40 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar for tax? What would you say? 20 cents. All of you are going to take that. Well, you can do that now by taking your IRA, converting it into a Roth today, at the rate you're at today, and that way when you die, because do Roth IRAs pay $1 of tax when the money comes out? 0 income tax. So now when you die, that $1 million IRA goes to Johnny. He has to take it out within how long? 10 years. How much tax is he paying? 0. Okay? So that's how all of these things kind of come together, is making your charitable contributions all in the same year. If you're going to do a Roth conversion, then you offset that income in that year. Does that make sense? Your trust, your will, these are great estate planning vehicles you can utilize to make charitable contributions. So, you know, if all of us, I'm not saying be like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett and leave, you know, the majority of your estate to charity, but if all of us in this room just did a little bit and left $10,000, $20,000, is that going to destroy your kids if they don't get an extra 10? Is that going to ruin them? No. Or 20. But if you gave a little bit, everybody in this room just gave a little bit to charity after you died, does that make a big difference to the community you're leaving behind? Yes. Cumulatively, it adds up. It makes a big difference. So just go in and see your estate planning attorney. Make a difference in the world. Hey, when I die, I want $10,000 to go to my favorite charity. $20,000. Have them change your trust. We put a provision in the trust that says, upon your death, $10,000 is to go to X, Y, and Z charity. And then when you die, that goes to your charity. The rest of your estate goes to your loved ones. Everybody's better off for it. Does that make sense? These are great things you can do with your estate plan. How about changing the beneficiary of our life insurance or IRAs or annuities? Do charities want your IRA when you die? Well, Gina, would you decline an IRA? Never. Okay? Of course not. They'll take whatever you leave them. So if you want to change the beneficiary of your life insurance policies, the life insurance policy pays to your favorite charity, change the beneficiary to your favorite charity. If you want your IRA to pay to your favorite charity, you can do that. Does it have to be all or nothing? Can I list on my IRA beneficiary form, I want 50% of this IRA to pay to my son Johnny, and I want the other 50% to pay to Sun Health, Make-A-Wish, Humane Society. Can I do that? Mm-hmm. So it's not all or nothing. But the point I'm trying to get across is do something. Leave something behind that's going to help the community that you've lived in for the last 20, 30, 40 years. You know, Gina stood up here and she was talking about all the things that Sun Health does. How many of you have been to Bannerdale Webb or Boswell? How many of you have had a procedure done there, or you know, COVID happened and you had to go there, right? These are your local hospitals. These are the hospitals that hopefully are around for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, when this community is just growing like crazy, and all the farmland has been built out, and the 303 is completely developed, and these are the hospitals that people are going to be going to. And so how do we make sure these hospitals are around to do that? Is there a money tree in the back of the hospital? They go, oh, I need another 10 grand to build on the emergency room. Do we have a money tree like that back there? No. So how do we do that? It's you. You are the people in this room that are going to make sure that happens. And all your friends and all the people you're talking to every day. That's how we make sure those things happen. How about real estate? Will Charities take your real estate? Absolutely, they'll take your real estate. So a good example of this is, let's say we have a highly appreciated piece of property. Okay? So I've got farmland in Minnesota. It's been in the family for years. It's got a cost basis of $100,000. That just means that's what we bought it for 50 years ago. And today it's worth $1 million. I don't want it anymore. I don't like farming. I've moved to Arizona. I'm retired. I don't want to pay the property taxes, the maintenance. I don't want to deal with it anymore. So I'm thinking about selling it. Well, if I sell that property, what do I have to pay? A capital gains tax, right? The difference between the fair market value and the cost basis, which is $900,000. $900,000 times our capital gains tax rate, state and federal, 25%. So 25% of the $900,000 is going directly to our favorite beneficiary, which is who? The IRS. It's bad planning, right? So instead of giving a quarter of the sale proceeds to the IRS, what could we do? Donate it to charity. Leave it to charity. Does the charity pay $1 of tax when they sell it? No. As long as it's a 501c3, there's no tax when the property is sold. Now you might be saying, well, Dave, then I lose out on the $900,000. That doesn't sound right. Maybe you don't need the $900,000. Maybe you care less. Well, then just give it directly to the charity. Well, what if you do want the $900,000? What's another way you could do it? I don't know if I have a slide on this. Yeah, there it is. I did review these before I came in today, I promise. So a CRT, a charitable remainder trust. So what you could do is you could create a charitable remainder trust. You could transfer ownership of the property to the charitable remainder trust. You could have the charitable remainder trust sell the property. Now you get a charitable deduction in the year that you made the contribution to the charitable remainder trust. Charitable remainder trust sells the property. Because it's a charity, how much tax is paid? 0. You get a lifetime income stream for the rest of your life on the $900,000 that the charity takes and invests, right? Because they're not going to keep the land. They're going to sell the land, get the $900,000, take the $900,000, invest it. You're just going to kick off an income stream for you for the rest of your life. And then when you die, what's left in the charitable remainder trust goes where? To your favorite charity. Now everybody wins. You win, you get an income stream, charity wins, they get it. Who's the only entity that doesn't win? IRS. Does that break your heart? If it does, this is the wrong seminar, okay? But that's how we can do some of those things, through a charitable remainder trust. All right. We're going to spend the rest of our time, which I think I've got, 10 minutes? 7. Just chop 3 minutes off, just like that. 7 minutes. We're going to take 7 minutes to talk about IRAs. All of you in here, almost all of you raised your hand saying you have retirement accounts, which once again, they're great financial planning vehicles. But if you are taking your RMD every year right now, and you're saying, Dave, this RMD thing, I hate it. I don't need it. I don't need to live off of. I've got more than enough income coming in from other resources. Or I don't need all of it. I need some of it. I only need 50% of it. The other 50% I don't need. All it's doing is causing income tax to me. And I'm already philanthropically minded. I'm already giving $10,000 a year to my church. But what I'm doing, Dave, right now is I'm taking the full RMD. Let's say I have an RMD of $100,000. I have to take it every year. And so what I'm doing right now, Dave, is I'm taking the full RMD of $100,000. It's coming directly to me, goes into my account. And then after I get the $100,000 into my account, I write a check to my church for $10,000. I heard somebody say no. That's what all of you should say. That's bad planning, okay? And this is why. Because once you take the RMD and it goes into your account, you're now liable for the what? The income tax on that. So there's something called a qualified charitable donation that you can make. And what you do instead is you tell Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Edward Jones, whoever has control of your IRA, is you say, I don't want the RMD to come directly to who? Me. I want it to skip me and go where? To the charity. Now, when you do that, do you get a charitable deduction for doing that? How many say yes? How many say no? The answer is no. Okay? You don't get a charitable deduction, but guess what? Doesn't show up as income on your income tax return. So what do you care? Right? So that's how we take care of our charity. We satisfy our philanthropic desire. It bypasses us. RMD goes to the charity or portion of it if we want. And then that RMD doesn't count as income on our income tax return. Does that make sense? Now, how much can we do every year? What's the limit? 100,000. Okay, so we're capped out at 100,000 that we can do. Certainly, if you want to do more than $100,000, then there might be some other strategies we can look at and utilize. But for a qualified charitable distribution that you're going to do like that, that's capped at 100,000. Do you have to wait until you're 72 before you can do that QCD? Under the Secure Act. Remember, Secure Act pushed our required beginning date to 72 from 70 and a half. Do we now have to wait till we're 72 before we can do a QCD? That did not change with the Secure Act. Okay? But we have to be how old? 70 and a half. Okay? So we have to be 70 and a half before we can do the QCD. So once you're 70 and a half, you start doing these QCDs, you're taking your RMDs out. You don't have to take an RMD at 70 and a half now. You can wait till 72, but you can accelerate your RMDs and do QCDs if you want to take them out and give them to charity. Does that make sense? Okay. So those are some planning opportunities and techniques. Any questions on that? Yes.
Now, does this qualified charitable contribution, I know it refers to the federal tax, right? What about the state tax? Now, you had something up there where it was divided 400 for a single contribution in one area, and then went up to 8, and then went up to 1,000, and then went up to what, 2,400 or something like that?
So those are Arizona state tax credits that we had up there, where we had the 4 different boxes of different types of charities you could give money to, and then you get a dollar-for-dollar deduction for those. And then we broke it down into single and married with the dollar amounts, 400, 800. If you're married, it's 800. If single, it's 400. So that's what that was on there for this the state tax credits.
So where would the church, because most of us probably go to the church, where would that fit into? Would that be the 400? Would that be the 800 or what?
Good question. So the question is, Dave, on that Arizona state tax credits slide you had up here, where would churches fall into that? Are they on that Arizona state tax credits? Are they in one of those 4 boxes up there? Those 4 boxes are limited to certain charities that the state of Arizona said, these are the 4 different groups you can contribute to that we'll give you a credit for. So it's not going to be every 501c3 that's out there. Sun Health is not going to be one of those. Most charities might not. It's public schools, it's private schools, foster kids. Salvation Army would not be on there. Okay? So these are state-specific things that Arizona is saying, we want this money to go to charities that are in the state that we think need this money. Okay, but it's up to $4,000. Once again, you have to make a choice. Would I rather it go to the State Department of Revenue or give it to the foster kids? You know, yeah, it's not going to your church that you want, but I'd rather give it to foster kids than the state of Arizona. So it's not as broad as what you think, where I can give it to any charity I like, but it's better than the Arizona State Department of Revenue.
But on the one you were just talking about with the IRAs, is that open to any
Yes.
charity?
Yes, so good question. So the question is, well, what about the QCDs, Dave? Can I give the QCD to any charity? Yes. The Arizona State tax credits is limited to very narrow charities. The state of Arizona said these are the only ones we're going to allow. everything else, QCDs that we're talking about, lumping your charitable donations into 1 year, you can do that to any charity. Okay? That's all that I have. I think I'm right on time. Okay. Okay, so last thing I'm going to say is, once again, we did cover a ton of information in a short amount of time. We talked a lot about taxes, which can be boring and complicated at times. So if you want to come in and see us, feel free, sign up for a free consultation. Be happy to sit down with you. There's no obligation for that. All of our information is in the back, like Gina said. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Gina. We have an office in Scottsdale and here in Surprise. Thank you.
Yes, I think he's very worthy of a couple of claps here. Dave, thanks so much for giving up your morning to come and share this. And every time I hear him, and it's been several times, I always learn something new and how it might apply to me or my family or whatever. So a lot of information that Dave shared. Again, Sun Health really wants to be a resource to people and get you connected with people who can help you, whether it's mental health, physical health, financial health, whatever it might be. So our next presenter, Greg Bodine, just recently joined our team. Just get this going here. Recently joined our team as an advisor. As you see in his bio up there, he spent many years with Salvation Army as the director of plan giving. He's got a real heart for philanthropy and for helping people understand how to better use their philanthropy. So we've heard a lot about taxes and a lot of different ways that you can manage those kinds of assets towards philanthropy. Greg's going to talk this morning about some tools that will give you a tax benefit, an impressive tax benefit, and will also then provide guaranteed lifetime income for you as well. So there's going to be a lot of information on this too, and I know that you're still awake with us, and so we're just going to do this kind of quickly for you. This is our first in a series of 5 workshops around plan giving and taxes and charities and all that. So you want to be sure to sign up for the others as we roll them out. Another one of our council professional advisors is with us today, Garrett Olexa, who's going to be presenting, we hope, in October. So that'll be a very good presentation as well. So Greg, if you want to join us up here, and again, on your way out, as you're leaving a little bit later, there's pamphlets that Dave has from his office. We have some information for you as well. Greg.
Well, good morning to those of you that I haven't greeted yet. I think I greeted most of you. Long time no see, Jim and Gracie. Good morning. I'm going to cover my session in about 15 minutes, so yeah. Do I point this in any direction? Yeah, right back, sure. Okay, we're going to talk about one of my favorite tools in charitable giving, and I've personally been involved with over 200 of these in my career, and over 200 all happy customers, you might say. They're a wonderful tool. I'm going to just get right into this because this is why you're here, ideas. And as Gina said, this is the first in a series of 5. We can't possibly cover everything that we've learned in our long careers, as Dave said, and I agree the same. Okay, so gift annuity. I like gift annuities. They're simple, they're straightforward, they pay a fixed income for life based on your age at the time. That's all there is to it. Thank you very much for coming. No, just kidding. Do I have to point this a certain way? This way? There we go. Okay, so we're going to take a little scenario which is very common, and I'm starting my. Are you going to give me the time? Can you give me a 5-minute warning? Okay. So CDs. I looked at this just last week to see what the numbers were, and how many of you have CDs or have had CDs? Okay. What are they paying? What are some of the numbers you're getting? Shout it proudly if you can. 2%, 2.5%? And you have to hold it kind of a long time for a rate like that, right? Yeah. What's that? 3.5 to 4. Everybody's going to want to talk to you after the workshop where you go. Some of the aggressive financial companies have a higher rate. I noticed that. I'm familiar with some of them. But Bank of America, one of my banks, is like, it's low, it's 1 or less pretty much. So, but it is what it is. And rates are going to be going up, but if you're stuck in a long CD and rates are going up like now, Fed just raised the rates, and things are changing fast. But you want more income, not uncommon. So let's take a scenario with $100,000 in a CD. So $1,000, 1%, excuse me, $100,000, $1,000 of income. Now, what is inflation running right now? Have you looked at that lately? 8, yeah, I just checked it. I'm seeing different numbers, around 8%. So that $100,000 annuity, CD is worth how much? 92,000. We're not going to factor in the reverse calculation, but, and then if it continues, the next year it's going to be worth, 8% less, 87-ish thousand dollars. I've never liked the word inflation because it doesn't convey what's really happening. It's really devaluation of the dollar. That's what's really happening. Inflation of number with no growth in value, that's a nice way to put it. But when you say, doesn't that strike you a little differently? It's devaluation is the issue, whatever the inflation rate. We've been blessed for a long time with something around 3-ish rate of inflation. Depends on what you rely on for your numbers, but now it's 8. So the 1%, and then you get taxed on the $1,000, right? So you're going to pay, let's just say 25% state and federal overall. So it's going to cost you $250. So you have $750 on $100,000. But at least it's safe. It's true. But now you're stuck in 1% for the next 4.5 years left. Okay, so here's just a simple solution. Many people do this. We're not saying take all of your CD. We're not saying anything. We're just saying if you like to give to charity, and gift annuities, by the way, have been around 175 years. 175 years. Lots of charities issue them, and they're a wonderful tool, a simple way of giving. So if we take a $35,000 amount from the 100, so you have still $65,000 in a CD, you leave that there, and you take just about a third of the total, and you reallocate that toward a gift annuity. Now you're giving the gift, it's gone. You get it. That's why you're entitled to a tax deduction, because you've made a bona fide charitable gift, but you get an income with it. Total income, $3,240. A charitable deduction, and part of the income is that wonderful word rings music in your ears, tax-free income. Can we all say tax-free income? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Tax-free income. That feels good, doesn't it?
Would that be applied to IRAs?
No. Not yet. The minute you take the money out of IRA, it is taxable. And that's why, as Dave pointed out, you have to have your custodian, your trustee, send it directly. There's been work toward that and wishing we could do that. And charities have lobbied for that for about 15 years. And every year you hear a report, and not yet, not yet. It would be nice. So solution, a gift annuity with fixed payments for life, income tax deduction, and higher rates. And I've seen a lot of happy people cash in some of their CDs or a lot of their CDs, and because they're at the age, they trust the institution. And by the way, the gift annuity is not secured. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the organization. So it's important to pick one that is going to be solvent for the rest of your life, because it is a contract. It's just a short contract. You contribute this cash or stock, and the charity will issue a short contract saying we promise to pay you this for the rest of your life, however long you live. And the informal anecdotal studies show that people who give live longer. And actually, I've talked to a lot of colleagues over my career, 31 years now, and it's uncanny. It's like, don't you sense that that donors who are generous tend to live longer? And they all say yes. They all say yes. Now, it's not a scientific statistical sample, but it's pretty strong anecdotal evidence. Because we know what the life expectancy tables are. You have a question, ma'am?
Yes, on that income tax deduction. Okay, now I realize that when you get a monthly income, that there's no taxes. Now, income tax deduction, if you're giving, let's say, 10, 20, 30,000, are you able to take that off as well? Your income
So you'll get, I'll show you an actual illustration in a minute, but the answer is that you'll get, if you get, say, 10, you said, say 10, 20, 10, if you do a $10,000 gift annuity, and our minimums are what now? At 10? Okay, very typical. If you do a $10,000 gift annuity, you might get a $4,000 or $5,000 deduction, depending on your age, maybe 7 or 8, not 100%. And your income will be partly tax-free, not completely.
Now, when you say your income will be, I thought you just said,
Income from the annuity.
no, but didn't you just say that one of the nice things when you get the income from the annuity, that it would be, it's not taxable?
I hope I didn't say that, because no, I may have misspoke, but no, it's not tax-free. It's partly tax-free, partly tax-free. And let's look at an illustration where we'll see the numbers. And we can run an illustration if you want to see in a particular case. So here's a 7.4% gift annuity. Someone who's a little older. Because our rates are between, for us, 3.9 to 8.45, I think it's 6 is the top rate. So 7.4, so $35,000 asset given to charity, and the annuity is almost $2,600, so 7.4%. So here's where we have the tax-free number. You see down, this has got a, oops, I did the wrong thing. Oh. All right. Well, you see at the very bottom in the center, tax-free payout is $2,209. So it's mostly tax-free in this case. And it varies by age and if it's funded with cash or stock. Now, I do want to highlight this. This is the most important number I want to share with you, the one at the very bottom of the center, the effective rate. I thought you said it was a 7.4%, Greg. I did. That's true. But you get tax savings for the gift, right? So it's kind of like a tax rebate. You want to say together, tax rebate, 1, 2, 3, tax rebate. Because that's the incentive, as Dave pointed out, in our tax code encourages philanthropy on purpose. Congress was very concerned 100 years ago that with this newly enacted income tax, gift tax, and estate tax, tax you every direction, every exit, there's tax, right? So they were concerned that it might hinder people giving, that people might give less. So they said, if you give $1, we'll share with you the cost of it, basically. You're going to save maybe 20 cents, maybe 40 cents on the dollar of your gift. That's the way it really works. You give $1, we will reduce your tax bill by 20 cents, 40 cents, as the case may be. So the gift of $35,000 is your tax deduction over there on the left of $16,600. It's just a calculation. The software does it in a split second. It's no work to do it. They may save almost $4,000 in this scenario. That's nice. So it's a $4,000 tax savings, $16,600 deduction, $4,000 saved, $4,000 less dollars you send in. So it didn't really cost $35, it cost $31. You see that? Because you saved $4 almost. So it really cost 30, you give 35, you save 4,000 taxes, and my net cost is 31. Nice, tax rebate, right? And you get tax-free income of 20, almost 90, about 90% of that is tax-free income. So what would you rather have, 100,000 in municipal bonds paying 2% or a CD paying 2%? The tax-free municipal bond saves you that, whatever your tax rate is. So the same thing here. So when you factor in the tax rebate, effectively, and the tax-free income, now you have the equivalent of having a CD paying 10.6. This is just like having a CD paying 10.6. Oh. Now, if people understand that, now we can really compare it with their CDs, their other things. Very powerful, very powerful. And this has been around 175 years. And we have over 100 annuitants at Sun Health, and it's a wonderful program.
If you're married, that's individual, isn't it?
Either way, you could do 1 or 2 lives. You can do yourself or you and your spouse together.
So you and your spouse together could file your taxes that way.
Yeah, probably the way you file is the way you'd have it. I've had married couples do individual annuities. Maybe if there's a health issue and they're kind of figuring that out. But usually married couples do it together because it's joint survivor. It doesn't drop in half when the first spouse dies. It continues 100% for as long as either spouse lives. So generally. And we have rate charts for both. So effective payout, as I just kind of covered, it's that 10-point plus is really something. And I've seen rates as high as, effective rates as high as, I think, 16. It's really marvelous. So this is why we'd have, if you want a no cost, no obligation, no spamming illustration, promise, we'll be happy to run one for you. They're wonderful tools, or someone you know. Okay, I've got 5 minutes left. Okay, 10.6 effective rate. That's the number I want you to think about. That's the real financial benefit. The personal benefit is you're helping a charity, and the gift annuity is directly with the charity. So you may have 5 of these, or 5 charities that you like. We hope you like us the best, but that's okay. I tell you, I've been on staff on board just 3 months, and I love this organization. I love the spirit of Sun Health, I honestly do. My uncle was pretty much saved at Boswell about 25 years ago because of the care he got there. So I'm forever grateful. Now, so I can do a gift annuity right now, or I can contribute cash or stock, mutual funds, and have the start date in the future. 2 years, 5 years, 15 years, whatever I like. When I do that, it's compounded internally, basically. So I get a much larger charitable deduction and a larger payout. And this is a very modest example. I'm going to throw in also capital gains with this example to throw in 2 things at once. So I said you can contribute cash or appreciated stock or mutual funds, the equivalent. And so $100,000 cost basis 20, capital gain 80. You have these in your materials so you can refer back to them. So if you were to sell the asset, then there's a possible tax in this scenario. Challenge, high income year, like a tax deduction, half stock or cash. I'm thinking, frankly, personally, I'm quite jittery about the stock market has gone so well so many years. I would wish that a lot of people, for their sake, would get some of their money out of the stock market and lock it in. I'm thinking people 75, 80, 85. I just wish that for people, separate from anything for Sun Health, but it's just a good move, a good prudent move in my estimate, and a lot of people. Who knows, is the stock market going to go up, back up, down? We'll see. It always goes up eventually. Isn't that right, Bert? Okay, very quickly. This is a very modest example, actually. We don't like to overstate numbers and, blow and glow, as they call it, or overly rosy picture. The rate is what the rate is, but if you were to compound it 5 years, this is a younger person, maybe using it for retirement, very common. Or for those that are concerned about money running out, this is a good thing to do. I think my money is going to last till I'm 88. Okay, then set up a gift annuity that starts when you're 89, and you'll have that extra, for sure, income coming to you. I'm not going to go through, there's not time to go through all the numbers, but just notice this, in the bottom center, the total payout of $126,000, how much did you put in? 100. So, I've heard a lot of donors mention this, that I get all my money back. And I know there's time value of money, but just mentally, that's very satisfactory. I'm going to make this large gift, and my lifetime, if I live the average, I get all my money back. And I have seen donors live into their hundreds, and they really did well on these. That's a good. So if you're going to live long and have good health care someplace wherever you live or live near, you might look at this. Okay, oops, went too fast. $100,000 income tax deduction, nice. The longer you defer it, the higher the percentage of income tax deduction. Typically, these are over 50% if you defer them like 8 or 10, 12 years. Tax savings, again, a very modest example. I'm going to just breeze through this. Okay. So, as Dave was saying with the converting an IRA to a Roth, this is another way, with a deferred annuity especially, and we can get a tax deduction easily of 50 to 70% if you defer it long enough. If you need a tax deduction to go against a big tax bill, like converting some of your Roth, convert 100,000 of a Roth, 100,000 of an IRA into a Roth, then a charitable gift annuity, give you that for sure income later in life, can give you a nice deduction this year at the same time. So that's another way to help make a Roth conversion. Okay, there are a lot of other things here. Sale of we don't have time to go over this, but you wanted to mention about this? Okay, that's all I have to cover, but just, oh yeah, any last questions about gift annuities? Was I that good? I answered all your questions?
Okay, I know it's been a lot of information today, Greg, and I think Dave is still here if you have questions where you want to have conversations with Greg and Dave as you leave. These are our upcoming topics here. We've had a lot of people say, boy, this was such a tough tax year this year, and you know, we want to help people make next year a better tax year, so that's going to be our presentation in June, where we're going to be make it your best tax year ever. And then we're setting our dates for September, October, and November. But these are the topics, and just making sure that you plan. You know, I think that there's some great value in considering what you've heard today and thinking how this applies to you for your plans, for your heirs, for your charities, for your taxes. So we're happy to do this. It's been wonderful to be with all of you today. We hope that you'll sign up for the June 14th session as well. And you can ask questions of Greg or Dave or our team members. You see Missy's over here, and there's Pamela. Sue's in the back. Here's Andrea. You can ask questions of any of us, Linda. So we're happy to answer those questions at any time. And we'll stay around for questions if you have some now. And be sure to grab some items on your way out. And happy Cinco de Mayo. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll draw. There's this wonderful holiday gift basket back here. Oh. You're not a good shaker? There you go. Okay. All right, we'll just draw it. I hope all of you got your names in here. All right. Okay. Oh, Mike Topolo. Yay for Mr. Topolo. Wonderful. Colonnade resident. There he goes. Okay. Party at the Topolos. Okay. Thank you again.